Fertility tracking devices are all the rage right now, and I have tried a number of them over the years. In this video, I'm going to share a little bit about my fertility journey and how I have been using Inito to help track my fertile window to hopefully get pregnant. My name is Katie Clark, and I am an international board certified lactation consultant. This video is a little bit different than some of my other videos where I primarily talk about feeding. However, I feel like fertility and pregnancy and breastfeeding all go together, and a lot of women that I work with are breastfeeding and are trying to get pregnant or trying to avoid pregnancy. So I'm hoping that sharing a little bit about my experience with some of these tracking devices might be helpful for you as well. As many of you might know, I have 3 wonderful children. I am so grateful for them and that I have been able to carry them to full term and them be healthy. My first 2 children, I had no issues getting pregnant with. I was fairly young. I got pregnant with my first when I was 21 and my second when I was 25. After my second birth, I had a lot of issues with my menstrual cycle, and it was just terrible. I was in so much pain. I could hardly get off the couch, and it was just a very difficult thing. The time came when he was about 2 and I was like, I would like to have another baby. I thought I would get pregnant quickly, and I did not. We tried to get pregnant and it did not happen, and the issues I was having with my menstrual cycle were just worse and worse. Eventually, I did get diagnosed with endometriosis and I had excision surgery, and I did get pregnant pretty quickly after that. So I carried him to 37 weeks and I was very grateful for him. And I always felt like we would have another child. I always wanted to have 4. I felt that was what we needed to have in our family. And with him, it took about 14 months to finally conceive, which was difficult, but I know other people go much longer. But I thought that we would be able to get pregnant again. And for the last 2.5 years, we have tried to have another baby, and I have had multiple chemical pregnancies, and it's been difficult. It's hard no matter how many children you have if you feel like your family's not complete to go through fertility issues. And this obviously is not to undermine anyone who is going through primary infertility that had not been able to have any children, and my heart goes out to you. It's to do with a fertility tracking device. But this is my journey and my experience, and it has definitely been hard. It's never easy to have losses, and I have had surgery again for endometriosis. We've not been able to be successfully pregnant before that. I actually got pregnant right before my surgery, but that ended in an early loss. That is partly where my Inito journey comes in. So my goal with this video is to share my honest experience with Inito. They did send me the device, but I reached out to them because I really wanted to use it, and I asked if they would send it to me. There was no requirement for a positive review, but I wanted to share my experience because it has given me a lot of very helpful information. I hope that if you are looking into this device, it's something that this video will be helpful to help you decide if it's the right thing for you. I have had some fertility struggles with before my 3rd pregnancy, and then also this last 3 coming up on 3 years. With endometriosis, it definitely causes some hormonal imbalances. I also found out I have Crohn's disease, which can also impact fertility as well. I've worked with a NAPRO technology doctor here in the Denver area, and they have a different approach to fertility issues. I had my surgery, and I've also had polyps removed and all sorts of different things. I've been on different supplements, and currently I am actually on letrozole to help with ovulation. My cycle has never been like super crazy. For most of my life, it was 28 days. For the last few years, it did get up to almost about 35 days, but with some different interventions, I have been able to get it back down to 28. That's where Inito has come in handy, because when I first started using it, I wasn't quite as regular with when I was ovulating, and so it showed me that I was ovulating way later than I was. Tracking ovulation can be really hard, especially if you are not super familiar with your body and what's normal and what's not. That's where Inito is very helpful, because it lets you pinpoint your exact fertile window and when you are ovulating. It confirms ovulation with the urine test that you do, which is awesome. There are so many different ones on the market, and this one is unique because it actually tracks the actual hormones in your urine, the metabolites, to give you a better window of what is going on with your body. Because it tracks multiple hormones, a lot of them will just track like your LH, some will track your PDG or your progesterone, and some will track your temperature. I use Temp Drop to track my temperature because I figure all the resources out there that I can use, I'm going to use. There's other ones that will track LH, that you use your urine, and there's an app that will help to predict your fertile window. However, I love all of the data that it gives because it tracks 4 different hormones, which I'll talk about more in a little bit. I wanted to try Inito just because I wanted to make sure I was actually ovulating. I was using LH strips, I was tracking cervical mucus and all of that fun stuff. And through that experience though, I was never 100% sure that I was actually ovulating. And so I wanted to see what was going on with my hormones because I have already done a Dutch hormone test. I have done variety of hormone testing over the years, and my hormones are just all over the place. My progesterone tends to be quite low, which we believe is partly one of the reasons why I have trouble getting and staying pregnant, because I have gotten pregnant, they just have not progressed past about the 5th. I liked it because it helps you to find your fertility patterns. It is very consistent, and in my experience, I find that it is very accurate with what I am observing with my body as well. It is expensive though, so when I looked into it, I was like, I'm not sure. You buy the initial monitor, which is expensive, and then you have to use the strips each month, which are also quite pricey. And so I had to consider that. Fortunately, they did send me one, which I am grateful for, but I have had to continue to buy the strips, which has been expensive. You can sometimes find used monitors, like especially in the Inito Facebook group. So if you're looking for an option for that, you can check that out. I also have a coupon code, which I will put in the description below. I also think that it's important to track your temperature. This is the Temp Drop 2. I previously used the Temp Drop 1. You can also just use your basal body temperature, but with me, I wake up all night long. I get up, I go check on get my kids that are waking up and calling for me. And so this is a great device because it is not as impacted by you getting up in the middle of the night. However, I have found that it has not been super accurate for always tracking my exact ovulation window, especially if it malfunctions during the night. It says it doesn't track it, or I forgot to put it on. However, it is helpful to see the trends, which I put into the Inito monitor. So I'm going to walk you through how the Inito monitor works. They come with little plastic cups that you pee in, and then you just dip this in it for about 15 to 20 seconds. After that, you will take off. So that's what it looks like this at first. And so you dip that part in, then you take this off. Make sure you do that. The first time I used it, I did not do that. And I was like, why is this not working? It's because I wasn't using it right. So this is the blue part that there's a monitor that you're gonna put. So you put this monitor onto your phone. They are specific, the clips are specific to different brands of phones. So this is for the 14 Pro. If you buy a used monitor though, you can buy clips for fairly inexpensive. And so you put this on your phone, and then you open the app, and it will instruct you to put the strip into the monitor like this. And then it will take about, I believe it's 300 seconds, though I've seen some people say there's some trialing going on with less. It takes about 10 minutes, I think, for it to fully process. After it has fully processed it, it will show up on with an alert. It will tell you not in your fertile window. It will say if you're in your high fertility, peak fertility, and then it also will tell you when you have ovulated. And so it has you do a couple of different, you're not supposed to test every single day of the month. There are a couple of times right before your fertile window, and then throughout your entire fertile window until it confirms ovulation. And so on average, I think you use about 9 to 10 strips per cycle. And so it comes up with these windows by tracking your estrogen, your progesterone metabolite in your urine. And so that's not the same as getting your blood tested for your estrogen, just because metabolites in your urine are going to be different. It also tests your LH, which is the luteinizing hormone, which tells you if you have ovulated, and usually there is a LH surge right before you ovulate, and then FSH. And so it uses all of these to track when your ideal time to try to conceive is. After you have gone through your fertile window, it will continue to have you checking to see if you have had an appropriate 3-day rise of your progesterone. Once that happens, it pinpoints when they think your exact ovulation date was, and then you just are able to track your cycle a little bit more completely that way. I found it very accurate. This last month, I actually did a medicated cycle with ultrasound with follicle studies, and it was right on with all of my ovulation. And so it was very accurate, in my opinion, for tracking when my fertile window was. I will say if you miss a test though, that does throw it off. Pretty recently, I had forgotten to do a test, I think on day 10. And so it actually didn't tell me that I was in high fertility, and all of a sudden it just said peak fertility. Thankfully, I was tracking other things and I knew that I was in that higher fertility range, but it sometimes if you don't do the test exactly when it tells you to, that will throw off all of the other results. I think some people say up to 3 cycles for it to totally sync with what's going on with your body. The first cycle that I tracked it with, it said that my fertile window was like days 9 through 13, which was not accurate at all. The second month though, it was right on, and I actually got pregnant right away. That was the first pregnancy that I knew about since my last chemical pregnancy, which had been almost 1.5 years prior. And so I was like, this is amazing. This is like the best device in the world. This helped me get pregnant. And the dates were different than actually what I had thought during that month. Unfortunately, I did lose that pregnancy pretty quickly. And I actually believe that I knew that before it happened because of Inito. They do not recommend that you keep testing after you confirm ovulation. And after my experience with that, I will never do that again. But if you're in the group, a lot of people test every single day. So I did test because I was having a surgery that was coming up and I wanted to make sure that I was not pregnant. And so I was just testing it. I had not had a positive pregnancy test, but I noticed that when I was testing it, my progesterone jumped up a lot, which Inito does not confirm pregnancy. But if you see your progesterone jump up a lot towards the end of your cycle, that can be a sign that you are pregnant. And so mine jumped up a lot. My LH also jumped up, which sometimes that can increase right before your cycle starts. Or it also is very chemically similar to HCG. And so when that went up a lot, I was like, I might be pregnant. It was actually day 10. And at that point I had had negative pregnancy tests. And so I went and tested and I actually was pregnant and I was so excited. It was just like the most wonderful news that helped me get pregnant. I'm not gonna have this surgery. However, I was very obsessive with testing because again, I was having that surgery and I kept testing with Inito and I saw my progesterone dropping. I saw my LH very going up and down and I was like, this doesn't feel right. I already felt like that pregnancy was not right where it was supposed to be because the pregnancy test was so light. I think it was a very late implantation and the test never got very dark. With my successful pregnancies in the past, the tests were just dye stealers right away. And so I kept testing and praying that this baby would be sticky and it was not. And I could definitely track that with what happened with Inito, but I knew that my pregnancy wasn't viable and Inito did show me that as well, along with blood tests, obviously, and my doctor. And so again, I've already mentioned this, but using the Inito monitor to track your urine, just remember that these are metabolites in your urine. So this is going to be different than your blood tests. A lot of people will be like, I just got my blood test and Inito said my progesterone was 8 and it was actually 40. This is so wrong. It's just because your body processes progesterone especially differently in your urine. So you really can't compare your blood test to your urine tests. For the most part though, I think that it is a great device and I have used it consistently. I have not gotten pregnant again, but it has been very helpful to see what interventions that I've been doing have helped. I have been successfully able to get my cycle down from about 34, 33 days down to 28 days. And I believe that is solely due to some of the supplements that I've been taking and some of the lifestyle changes I have made. I am currently taking FH Pro and I was also taking another supplement that was, I believe it was Organophy. It was a drink. And I was able to see from month to month that my hormones did balance out, which is really cool. So I think it's not only helpful to get pregnant, but also to see if certain things you're doing are helping with your overall fertility. It was an emotional roller coaster using it, especially when I was pregnant and then I was not pregnant. I learned a lot. I learned that I am not somebody that will ever test that way again. Some people find a lot of comfort in that and want to test. Not only is it expensive to test every day, but for me, it was just so emotionally exhausting where I was like, I'm never doing any tests ever again. I was on Facebook, on Baby Center, trying to find people that had charts like mine that had successful pregnancies, and it was just obsessive. And so if you are like me, don't do that. Don't look at all of the tests and try not to test obsessively unless it brings you peace of mind and it makes you feel better. Because at the end of the day, Inito really is not designed to detect pregnancy and to detect if it is going well. So I don't know that it's worth the stress and anxiety to do that. I do find that the Facebook group, the Inito Facebook group, which I will link to, is really helpful. It can be a little much. I had to mute it for about 30 days, especially because you kept seeing all those big BFP posts, which I'm excited for those families. A lot of those people have been wanting to have just one child for a long time, and that is a very exciting thing. But it can be a lot, especially when you see these posts constantly in your feeds. I'm in that group a lot now, but it's a good group. If you are getting started with Inito, that can be helpful. I like to look in the charts in there. I think that they can be really helpful to just see what's going on with your body. So how I currently use Inito, I just use it as they prescribe, as they recommend. I wait until the app tells me to take a test, which I believe are usually like day 8 and 10. As soon as it says I'm in the high fertility zone, I will start testing every day until my ovulation is confirmed. It's usually anywhere from 7 to 9 tests each cycle that I'm using. And as soon as it confirms ovulation, I put away my test and I am done. I test with the first morning urine, which is what Inito recommends. However, other people have sworn by testing with the second morning urine. I don't have any opinion on that. Sometimes I have tested later if I have forgotten in the morning, but it's up to you. But their recommendation is the first morning urine just because it's more concentrated. Sometimes I do forget those. I have my test strips right there, and you do want to make sure that you put the strip in there for the amount of time it tells you to do, and then you want to test exactly how they say, and don't throw out your urine until you've gotten a positive test. The few times I have actually dumped out my urine before getting the test results, it's been like, there's an error with your test. And I'm like, seriously, like, why does that happen just the few times I've done this? So don't throw it out just in case you have to retest. Sometimes they will say this test our team needs to look at it more closely. If you see that, it will come back later. It will come back pretty quickly. Sometimes if the monitor got wet or you kept this in too long, there might be too much urine. So just make sure that you follow the instructions very closely so you are not wasting strips, because they are expensive and that is not fun to have to use 2 strips in a day if you don't want to. A lot of people will save on strips by also using LH, the LH ovulation strips, to use those until they start to get a positive test, and then they'll use Inito after that to confirm ovulation. And so I think that's helpful, especially if you're tempted to do 10 tests a day. It's better just to do 1 test a day and then use the LH strips to catch your LH surge if you find that you are not catching it with Inito, because when you're only testing one time a day, you might not catch that surge. So those ovulation strips can be really helpful to make sure that you are actually catching exactly when your LH surges. Because I have some people being like, oh, my LH didn't go up very high, and it's only because they did not catch when it actually hit it. So those strips are super cheap and they can be used alongside the Inito very easily. As I already mentioned, I use my Temp Drop, which I love their Temp Drop 2. Their version 1 I did, but it took forever to sync and I feel like it was a little more glitchy. Sometimes it will say, oh, it didn't track last night, and I swear like I did press this, and sometimes it will say there was some heat disturbances, but I do using this. It's a completely different product from Inito. It tracks your temperature, as I've already mentioned, and so I'm a huge fan of it. I will also put a link to that and my coupon code in the description, but I've been using this for 2 years. This is actually what I use more to track my cycle and see like how my temperature's going. Obviously, pregnancy tests are the only way to know that for sure, but this has been helpful to see, also to track my hormones and to see them becoming more balanced. So I just wanted to share some tips and tricks for using Inito. Like I already mentioned, join the Facebook group. It has a lot of good information in there. You can see people's charts, you can ask people questions and different experiences. I found it helpful, like when I started letrozole, I asked in there, what might I notice be different with my tests? And someone's like, your estrogen will be lower. And it was 100% lower. I tend to have very high estrogen, and letrozole decrease that because it's meant to help you ovulate, and sometimes estrogen makes that more difficult. The Facebook group was really helpful for some of those questions that I have, so definitely join the Facebook group. I would manage your expectations. Know that it is just a device. There is room for error. It may not always track things exactly how you think, and so just manage your expectations. Know that it is not a surefire thing that you're gonna get pregnant. I did get pregnant right away when I first started using it, which I was like, this is amazing. I do think that it helped me pinpoint my ovulation, because that was back when it was a little bit more erratic and I was able to get pregnant. But now that things are more regular, I still haven't gotten pregnant, even though I am tracking things extremely carefully. If you are not familiar with tracking your cervical mucus, learn what that is and use it to your advantage. Use it to track. I like to track it in there. All of my symptoms. I also put my temperature in there so I can see how it ebbs and flows with my progesterone increases. So that's really helpful. I would definitely use some kind of temperature tracking device if you can. Some people use their watches, some people use like an Oura ring. There's a lot of options, and try not to be obsessive. That's what I do, and it's not great. And some people do find peace of mind using it every day. Andrew, what's wrong, buddy? Oliver, what's going on? Overall, my experience with Inito has been positive. I do think it is an accurate device, and that if you are struggling to get pregnant, especially if you are not at the point where you are working with a fertility doctor, it might be helpful, because a lot of people just don't get pregnant because they are missing their fertility window. And if you are new to fertility tracking, this can be a really great device for helping you see what's going on with your body. Even if you are working with a fertility doctor, you're doing all the things, I still think it's helpful just so you can have another source of data. Of course, I'm just one person and there are a lot of different opinions out there. If you have used Inito and you've been successful, I would love for you to share it below. And if you have used Inito and you've had issues, share that as well, because we all learn from each other. I do have coupon codes that you can grab in the description for the video. And if you find this content helpful, let me know. I am definitely very passionate about breastfeeding, but I'm also passionate about fertility. And I think that many of us don't know much about our bodies. I know I sure didn't before I got into this journey, even after having 2 children of my own. And the more knowledge we have, the better. And I am a huge data nerd. I think that having information to help us understand our bodies is really valuable. And Inito does a great job of helping you to put that back in your control, because a lot of times when you are going through fertility struggles, it feels like everything is out of your control and you feel like you can never get any answers and you're always relying on your doctor, which is important to work with a medical provider, but it can be helpful to feel like you have something that you can do and rely on. I've seen many people get pregnant with Inito, and I think that it's worth trying if you're struggling. Again, it is an investment. The strips are expensive, but sometimes you can find people selling them for less expensive, but it can be less expensive than some fertility treatment. Yeah, it's a great option for many different families, many different types of people, and I would say give it a try if you are curious if it's going to work for you. Thank you for watching this very long video. If you got to the end, I am very proud of you. If you have questions, drop them below, and then if you're interested in more breastfeeding and fertility related content, just hit the subscribe button.